Hello everybody, welcome back to Call to Broadcast. I'm your host Will, and today I want to share with you something that I came across that got me thinking. Now before we start, I do want to point out I've got a little bit of a cold, which is probably why I sound a little bit weird, maybe a little bit congested, but that shouldn't really change much. I'm going to do what I can in post to make it not sound so bad, but now you know why I sound so weird. Now, on to the subject matter for today. Like I've said before, I don't really have any personal social media, so when it comes to news, I hear things directly from news sources or from my friends or my brother or someone else who sends something to me and asks if I've checked it out. However, just because I have no personal social media, I still do peruse through movies and other forms of media like YouTube. Where would we be without finding that perfect YouTube video to eat dinner with when we're by ourselves? And recently, I came across this from a YouTuber named Ethan is Online. Now, Ethan is a YouTuber with about 260,000 subscribers, and he makes video essays usually in response to or reacting to some sort of subject matter. Unfortunately, his arguments mostly boil down to him just attempting to insult somebody on some, subject matter he doesn't like, and then just a lot of profane talking. And this clip of his that I came across is from a video titled "The Most Insecure Men on YouTube." And in this video, Ethan reacts to TikTok videos that claim that pornography and masturbation are bad for men, which they definitely are. However, Ethan rebuts these claims by trying to defend the use of pornography and masturbation, and this is a short clip in reaction to one of those TikToks.
But trust me, if you're honest with yourself about how you approach porn and sex in general, you're probably not going to be as ashamed about engaging in those things. It's not a bad thing, it's normal.
Now, in this clip, Ethan defends the act of masturbation by claiming that it's completely normal and healthy. Now, this video is not going to be a takedown of Ethan or of pornography or of masturbation, even though I would love to cover those topics at a later date. But rather, this video is made in relation to the last bit of the clip where he says, "It's not bad, it's normal." That sentiment of being something normal, therefore it is not bad, is a common argument used to defend some common practices. And funny enough, that idea almost always applies to something that is traditionally a sin. I wonder if there's a connection. Anyways, this is the topic of discussion for today. People who want to push bad practices and ideologies will often defend it by saying that those actions or philosophies are normal or that they should be normalized. Now, these are actually two separate arguments, and I will be addressing both of them separately. Let's start off with that first half of the argument. The certain act is normal, therefore it is all right. Now, ironically enough, this statement is correct. Something that is normal is good, which I will explain in a second. However, the error comes in the definitions of the words used. When we have people pushing this argument, they usually deem the word normal to mean common. So, let's lay some definitions really quick. Common is defined as prevalent, occurring, or done often. Therefore, something that is common is something that is done or happens often on a regular basis. Normal is defined as conforming to a standard, typical, or expected. In other words, something that is normal is something that is as it should be according to a standard. Now, this definition of normal actually comes pretty close to the definition of the term good, and this makes sense. When the world was created, God made the world to conform to a certain standard, and before the fall, it was good. So fundamentally, good is the normal, which makes sense, and evil is abnormal because evil is when something is not as it should be. However, when many people use the argument, "this is normal, therefore it is not bad," they conflate the two words common and normal, and they really mean common. Now, this can be done because of one of two reasons. Either one, they don't recognize the difference between two words, or two, they understand the meaning of normal, but their view of what something should be is messed up. Let's take Ethan's example earlier of masturbation. He makes the claim that masturbation is not bad because it is normal. I think that by this, he means that masturbation is good. The fact that it is common can justify this, but he uses the word normal as common. This argument is actually used by a lot of people who claim that it is alright to masturbate because it is normal and it's healthy. And they wouldn't be wrong about masturbation being common. According to Tanga, a quote-unquote sexual health and wellness company, found that around 84% of Americans masturbate, 92% of men, and 76% of women. The other 8% of men are liars. So, it would certainly not be wrong to say that masturbation is a common thing. However, it is wrong to say that just because it is common, that means it is now good. Let's take a different practice, such as abortion. A common argument made in favor of abortion is that abortion is totally normal. According to the Guttmacher Institute of 2024, 1 in 4 women are going to have an abortion in their lifetime. And in 2014, the same percent of women say that they had an abortion by age 45. That's pretty common for the practice of abortion as well. An article in the magazine Medium makes the argument in a piece titled "Abortion is Normal and It's Time We Start Treating It That Way." And in January of 2020, an exhibition was organized in Washington, D.C. that was literally called "Abortion is Normal," which called for the funding of quote-unquote safe and legal abortions. Now, obviously, no abortion is safe because it always ends in the killing of a human, but that's a subject for a different time. Now, with these examples, and this applies to most other things, which we really know deep down are bad behaviors and actions, the defense of something being good is that it is normal. But this is not the case. Being a Catholic podcast, I do subscribe to the thought process of we know God created the world with a natural order and purposes in mind, and when something serves that purpose and conforms to the natural order, it is normal, therefore it is as it should be. However, if something that does not conform to the natural purpose, then it is not as it should be, and therefore not normal. Here's a good example to help understand this on a more basic level. When a heart can efficiently pump blood and oxygen through a body without fault, then that is a normal heart, and that is good. But when something happens to the heart and it stops beating regularly, and instead begins to convulse in a way that stops it from beating correctly, such as in a heart attack, then the heart is no longer normal and no longer good. That is the same here. Why is masturbation bad? Because it is a sexual act, and sex is primarily for the purpose of creating and harboring life, specifically in the context of a marriage. When you disconnect that sexual act from its purpose, there is no longer what it should be, and therefore bad and not normal. It's extremely common, for sure, but not normal or good. This also applies to fornication and other sexual acts that are not open to the creation of life. The same concept of being bad just because it is not normal also applies to abortion. And by the way, I think we can even discover this with just our reason, even without establishing God immediately, even though I prefer to because I believe that the only way the world makes sense is if there is a God, but that's also a subject for a different time. If sex is the only natural way to create new life, then it would logically make sense that the primary purpose of sex is reproduction, and that view of how sex is seen is practiced as that, then sex is normal. However, if we pursue sexual action for other reasons, then it is not being used as it should be, and therefore not normal. Now I want to analyze the argument that I brought up earlier that is often made by people who wish to push harmful and sinful philosophies and actions. This is the argument that X act is not commonplace in society, but I want it to be, therefore we should, quote, normalize it. This means changing the standard of morality. However, it's not possible to do that because moral standards are presented by God, not man. Let's take the example of gay marriage. Marriage is the exclusive union between a man and a woman for the purpose of creating a family and children. In other words, marriage is as it should be when a man and woman bind to themselves together in love and start a family. But when we run into trying to normalize gay marriage, we run into the roadblock of gay marriage not being normal, because it's not. But many proponents of gay marriage will work around that by saying, we need to normalize it, by which that statement they intrinsically mean they need to change the standard of marriage from something that is as it should be and expand it. However, it is not possible because marriage is a thing created by God, handed to man, and that is unchangeable because, again, we cannot change the morality of something, we can only change how we conform to it. Another example of something that is trying to get normalized is the expansion of family from the traditional model. Now, there are families that consist of 2 dads and kids or 2 moms and kids, like this lesbian couple on YouTube, who document their attempts at getting pregnant through unnatural means.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Okay. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Or even worse, I'd argue, are the families that transition their young children, like this NBC News Nightly clip from 2015 covering the story of a 5-year-old transgender child.
And while we don't know the exact number of children, increasingly families are going public with what it means to be a transgender kid.
So 2 sisters and you're the brother, right?
Yeah.
Were you always the brother?
Not always.
What were you before?
They're a sister.
How come it changed?
Because I wanted to be a boy.
Okay.
In the beginning, Mimi and Joe LeMay were raising 3 girls. But when Mia was around 2, she started saying, "I'm a boy."
By the way, going back to my point earlier about not needing God to determine what is normal here, if you are any form of a rational person who isn't insane, whether you're Christian or not, you probably look at these and think, this is obviously wrong. Like looking at that first clip and saying, wow, you're actively depriving a child of a father? Or the second clip and say, wow, you're encouraging a transition on a child who isn't even old enough to know what she's doing? When I was 5 years old, I couldn't even make the argument to my parents that I wanted to have candy for breakfast, and it was stupid of that. That reaction probably indicates that there is something resembling a normal thing. That is, there is a way that things should be. And this applies to all vices and sins that our culture has made more commonplace under the guise of normalization. We cannot normalize something because there is a preset order to reality that is unchangeable by humans. Something can only be fundamentally normal when it conforms to that order. Now, I do want to make something very clear. Not all things that are being, quote, normalized, or just more common, in the sense of being more common, are bad. For example, I'm not opposed to the idea of making places more accommodating to people with disabilities, or talking more openly about mental health to a certain extent. And these are all things that are being quote-unquote normalized. In reality, these are things that become more common, which is not attempting to change the morality of those actions. But when you find something that does not conform to a natural order and purpose that is being called normal, do not be fooled by that. Here's a few examples of things that are being pushed by their proponents for normalization. Abortion, masturbation, pornography, transgenderism, or really just the entire LGBT agenda, fat acceptance, men not being men or women not being women. By this I mean the degradation of traditional masculinity and traditional femininity, non-traditional families, etc. Notice how all these are becoming more common. But just because something becomes more common doesn't mean it becomes good. The morality of that action is constant. If it doesn't follow order, then it is abnormal, no matter how much those infatuated by it pretend it isn't. And when you listen to these arguments, keep an eye and an ear out for those misdirects in the arguments of those who try to push these ideas. Anyways, that's the end of today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you guys want to hear me talk about other topics, leave those topic ideas in the comments. I'll read through them, and it makes my life a lot easier when deciding what I should talk about. Other than that, that's all I've got for today, and I will see you next time. Go in peace.